My own children put me in a nursing home so they could steal my company. They thought I was too old to fight back. They thought wrong. My name is Walter Granger. I'm 71 years old. And for 40 years, I built a life I thought I'd be proud to hand down to my family. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was most wrong about my own children. This is the story of how my family tried to throw me away and how I made sure they'd regret it for the rest of their lives. Stay until the end, because what I did to get my company back, they never saw coming. I married my wife, Diane, when I was 24. We built a hardware business from a single rented garage. 38 years later, when she passed from cancer, that garage had become a chain of 7 stores across the state. We raised 3 children, Marcus, my oldest, then Renee, then my youngest, Tyler. I gave them everything. Private schools, new cars at 16. Marcus got his first house with a down payment I wired him without a second thought. Renee got her wedding. Every flower, every dress, every dollar, paid in full. Tyler got his college tuition, his startup capital, his second chance after his startup failed, and his third. I never once asked for anything back. Not gratitude, not visits, just love, I suppose. The kind I thought I deserved after giving so much. When Diane died, something in me cracked. I started forgetting things, small things, at first. Where I put my keys, whether I'd already taken my pills. My children noticed before I did. And that's when the real story begins. It started with a dinner, all 3 of my children together for the first time in years. I should have known something was wrong. They never gathered unless there was money on the table. Marcus spoke first. He said the business was getting too complicated for me to manage alone. Renee said I'd been looking tired lately. Tyler, sweet, struggling Tyler, said nothing at all. He just stared at his plate. Within 2 weeks, there were papers on my kitchen table. Power of attorney, guardianship forms. A name I didn't recognize, Dr. Philip Yates, had apparently evaluated me and found me exhibiting early signs of cognitive decline. I had never met this Dr. Yates. I signed nothing. But it didn't matter. 3 weeks later, 2 men in suits showed up at my front door with a court order. My own children had filed for emergency conservatorship behind my back using a forged medical evaluation and a judge who apparently didn't ask enough questions. They moved me into Brookhaven Senior Living the following Monday. A beige room, a shared bathroom, a window that faced a parking lot. My company, the 7 stores, the trucks, the name above the door, was transferred into a family trust controlled by Marcus, Renee, and Tyler. I sat in that small room for 3 days before I understood what they'd actually taken from me. It wasn't the business, it was my voice. Here is something my children forgot. Something they never bothered to learn in all those years of taking. I built that hardware empire from nothing. And a man who builds something from nothing doesn't survive 40 years in business by being soft. I survived by being patient, by watching, by never showing my hand until I was ready. In my room at Brookhaven with nothing but a phone and time, I made one call. To a man named Arthur Beaumont, my old attorney, my oldest friend, the best estate lawyer in 3 states, and someone my children had completely forgotten existed. Arthur visited me the next day. I told him everything. The forged evaluation, the conservatorship, the trust. He listened, and when I finished, he smiled in a way I hadn't seen since we were young men building empires together. "Walter," he said, "do you remember the trust we set up 15 years ago? The one your children don't know about?" I did remember. Diane and I had quietly created a secondary trust years earlier, separate from the main estate, holding the deeds to all 7 store properties, untouched by whatever my children controlled. At the time, it had simply been prudent estate planning. Now it was a weapon. The stores themselves, the inventory, the brand, the day-to-day business, that my children now controlled. But the land beneath every single store, the buildings, those still belong to me. Arthur smiled again. They built their entire takeover on sand, Walter. They never checked who actually owned the ground beneath their feet. First we proved I was sane. Arthur arranged an independent cognitive evaluation. A real one conducted by 3 separate licensed physicians, fully documented, fully recorded. I passed every test without hesitation. Then we found Dr. Yates. It turned out the man wasn't a doctor at all. He was a consultant. Marcus had paid $8,000 to produce a falsified medical report. Arthur's investigator found the wire transfer in less than a week. With evidence in hand, we petitioned the court to terminate the conservatorship and reverse it on grounds of fraud. The judge, a different judge this time, one who actually read the file, was furious. Conservatorship fraud against an elderly parent isn't just a civil matter. It's a felony. But I told Arthur to hold off on the criminal complaint. Not yet. I had a different plan. Once the conservatorship was legally dissolved and my competency was a matter of public record, I had Arthur send one letter. Not to a courtroom, to my children directly. The letter explained calmly and without emotion that the land beneath all 7 Granger Hardware locations was, and always had been, solely in my name, held in a trust they had no legal claim to whatsoever. Their 90-day commercial lease, the one buried in the original trust paperwork they never bothered to read carefully, was expiring at the end of the month. I was not renewing it. Within 6 hours, my phone, the one they'd ignored for 3 months, rang 4 times. I let it go to voicemail every time. The next morning, all 3 of them showed up at Brookhaven together, the way they hadn't shown up in years. Marcus looked thinner. Renee's hands were shaking. Tyler couldn't even meet my eyes. I let them sit across from me in that small beige room they'd left me in. And for the first time since Diane died, I let myself feel something close to peace. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I told them I knew about Dr. Yates. I told them I knew about the forged evaluation, the wire transfer, the felony fraud charges that were 1 phone call away from being filed. I told them that the businesses they thought they'd stolen sat on land they would lose within 30 days unless every store was vacated. Marcus tried to negotiate. Renee cried. Real tears, I think, though I'd stopped being able to tell the difference. Tyler finally spoke. He said he was sorry. He said he'd never wanted any of this, that Marcus had convinced him it was for my own good. I believed him, a little. But belief doesn't undo betrayal. Here is what I told them. I would not file the criminal complaint, not because they deserved mercy, but because their mother would never have forgiven me for putting her grandchildren's parents in prison. But the trust, the business, the stores, all of it would be liquidated, sold. Every property, every brand asset, every truck. The proceeds would go into a foundation in Diane's name, supporting elder abuse legal aid for families who couldn't afford an Arthur Beaumont of their own. My children would inherit nothing. Not because I was cruel, because they had already taken everything they were ever going to get from me, and they'd thrown it away the moment they decided I was worth more unconscious than awake. It's been 2 years now. I moved into a small house near the coast. Nothing extravagant, just a porch, a garden, and quiet. Marcus reached out once, months later, asking for help with a loan. I didn't answer. Renee sent a letter on my birthday. I read it, and I didn't answer that either. Tyler is the only one I speak to now, occasionally, slowly rebuilding something that may never look like trust again, but might one day resemble honesty. People ask me if I have regrets. I tell them just one. I regret giving so freely for so long that my own children forgot I was a person and not just a wallet that occasionally needed managing. But I don't regret what I did when they finally pushed too far. Because the one thing my children never understood, the one thing they should have learned from watching me build something out of nothing, is that a man who survives 40 years in business doesn't lose everything quietly. He simply waits for the right moment, and then he takes it all back.